Protein, fats and fiber change everything about your metabolism. This is the irony of a low-calorie diet. Your body actually reduces metabolic function to meet your calorie intake. You want to upregulate your metabolic fire, eat more, but burn more, not burn less. Blood glucose regulation is massively important. That process, highly inflammatory, highly damaging to blood vessels, to brain health, to all sorts of things. Now we know that if we support certain aspects of our gut microbiome, it will literally change the chemistry of our brain.
Many of the people in my audience tell me a lot that as they get over the age of 50 or 60, some even later, they start to notice this drop in energy levels, and that they just can't bounce back from a busy day or from exercise. From a diet and nutrition perspective, why might that be?
It's really about metabolic resilience. So that ability to bounce back that we see so much in younger people, it's our ability to recover and mend that slows down. And that really is by definition what aging is. So the wear and tear, just breathing, never mind exercising, the heart beating, creates oxidative damage. There is some wear and tear that goes on just by living. And our capacity to mend from that every night, sleep and recovery is so important, is really good when we're younger. And as we get older, our ability to recover slows down. So cumulatively, day to day, we are sort of wearing ourselves out because we haven't fully restored through the night. And so we're sort of on the back foot the next day and then the next day and the next day. And that is why really over 50, I think, is a good benchmark. We have to be more careful about how well we rest and recover, what we're putting in our bodies, what we're choosing not to put in our bodies. And so we're just creating a more conducive environment to support those healing mechanisms. Otherwise we just get more exhausted because we are wearing ourselves out more quickly.
That makes sense. And you've just done a wonderful training for myself and the team today on gut health. And as I was watching you speak, I was just wondering what got you into this in the first place and how are you so passionate about it? I think it's great.
Gut health is extraordinary, and I really started getting into the weeds of it all back in 2012 when it was still quite new. So it was only in 2007 that the big research on the gut microbiome, which is this massive colony of microbes that live in the gut. 2007 in America was when it all started. So it's a very new science. And what has come out of the science over the last couple of decades is understanding that the microbes that live within us, so these are non-human species that live inside of us and depend on us to feed them, literally influence all systems in our body. So our brain chemistry, our metabolism, meaning how we make energy, how energetic we feel, how we repair and recover, our inflammatory responses, our immune responses hugely. So these massive systems that make us who we are and determine if we're sick, if we're healthy, if we're sleeping well, if we're recovering well, are largely, but not exclusively, influenced by what our microbes are doing. And what our microbes do is influenced by how we live and particularly what we eat. So we are in charge of them.
Yeah, so a lot of people will have heard of the gut microbiome. And before you came in, I wasn't 100% sure how much of this was truth and how much was fiction.
Yeah.
But you've said to us today how strong that link is between the gut and the brain, but not just the brain, the other processes in the body as well.
Yeah.
Can you just tell us a bit about those links?
Yeah. So what has come to light really in the last few years is this bidirectional communication system that is going on. And so within our digestive system, so all in here, and particularly in your large intestine, live these trillions, literally trillions, maybe up to 100 trillion microbes. They communicate with themselves, but they also have a system called quorum sensing that allows them to send messages around the body. So literally up to the brain, there is a lot of communication, sending nutrients, sending hormones, sending chemical messages to regulate our brain chemistry, so our mood, our capacity to learn, our memory, how inflamed our brains are. Inflamed brains don't work well. So our gut microbes are responsible largely for that. And all around the body, the microbes are communicating with inflammatory responses, immune responses, with the lungs, with the heart rate. So it is staggering. And it is therefore essential that we take more seriously what we are doing to our gut microbes. And going back to your first question, we have a resilience when we are younger where we can kind of get away with it, where we are more buoyant and we can bounce back. And even if we don't eat particularly well and we miss a night's sleep, and we can kind of function the next day and manage and get through, we lose that tolerance as we get older. And so we have to be better at understanding the needs of our gut microbiome and what we can do quite easily every day to ensure that our gut microbiome is working optimally, so that then all these other systems are taken care of, systems that we used to think we had no control over. I mean, brain health in particular, mental health in particular, like how do we manage our mental health? It is such a conundrum, and it is such a current problem. Now we know that if we support certain aspects of our gut microbiome, it will literally change the chemistry of our brain.
Yeah, it's just fascinating, that link. So what are some of the signs then that someone's gut microbiome is not as healthy as it should be?
Yeah, good question. And there are obvious things and not so obvious things. So there are many ways that an unhappy digestive system will show itself, and it's often to do with, although not exclusively, how happy the microbes are. So obvious things: constipation, diarrhea. If someone is urgently running to the loo, particularly first thing in the morning or multiple times through the day, and this starts to affect people's lives, particularly as they get older, they won't go out and be social. And we know that that has a huge consequence to mental health and general health if you are very isolated and getting lonely. But if people have urgent bowels, diarrhea, uncontrolled bowels, they're not going to go out and not know where a toilet is. So they stop going out. They stop accepting invitations. That's changing their world. So urgent bowels, constipation, another real big problem with the older generations, and that can be solved pretty readily, but that's a really key sign that there is something very off with your gut microbiome and your general digestive function. So bowel habits. Then bloating, particularly if you get bloated, the feeling sort of pressure building up in your belly, expanding after a meal. Something is going on. There is something off there balance-wise often. Burping, reflux, feeling very tired after eating is a common one. Having sort of general sense of fatigue and malaise and brain fog after food can be a sign that you've got the wrong microbes in the wrong place. So lots of very localized issues. But then more general issues like brain fog, like cravings, just feeling a bit off, and energy-wise, things like chronic fatigue and being constantly tired, that can be a sign that your gut microbiome isn't working, because they are so involved with the regulation of our metabolic function, meaning our energy production. And if we want to go a bit gnarly, the mitochondria, which are the energy-producing systems within our cells, so if we've got good mitochondrial function, we feel energetic, we're energized, it makes us feel youthful, we recover well from exercise. If our gut microbiome is off, there are problems within the digestive system, then that can cause the mitochondria, which make our energy, to slow down. And then we start to feel generally tired. We're generally less resilient. We are just more run down.
Yeah, it's really interesting hearing you talk about that, because some of those symptoms, so the tiredness, the brain fog, the difficulty getting out to exercise, a lot of those symptoms are things that people just associate with aging. Getting
older, yeah.
Yeah, and so what you're saying is someone who is feeling all of those things, it might not just be due to their age, it might be the gut microbiome could be.
Yeah, absolutely, because we all know people who are very elderly and very sprightly and very energetic, and different demographics around the world, we see people aging really well. Well, why? What is it about them that allows them to age well, where many Western people do not age so well? It's not a given that as we get older, we slow down and become more decrepit. I mean, I guess at some point we all do, but it doesn't, certainly in our 50s and 60s, we shouldn't be feeling like old people. Yeah. We should be able to push ourselves physically and mentally and be resilient. And if we're not able to do that, if one can't do that, then looking at and supporting gut microbial function is a very good place to start, because it has that ripple effect throughout the whole body. It's a very useful place to start, rather than just symptom managing, because that's not getting to the root cause of what's going on. Why I love working with the gut microbiome is almost irrespective of symptoms. I don't necessarily even have to know the whole history of it. If I can optimize your gut function, the body's pretty good at sorting itself out. The body has a phenomenal capacity to self-heal. We have so many mechanisms in place to sort out problems. The gut microbiome is one of the master controllers of sorting out problems, but it's got to be healthy and it's got to be balanced.
Yeah, I love that. And, not just chalking things down to aging and saying, well, do you know what, these are just symptoms to be managed now, but actually looking for the root cause.
Yeah, absolutely.
One of the other symptoms that people often have, especially as they get past the age of 60, 65, is joint pain, joint stiffness, and maybe inflammation. They feel just like the joints are generally inflamed. Can you talk about how gut issues could have a link to these symptoms?
Yeah, inflammation is a huge subject, and it is increasingly being understood to be probably one of the prime causes of almost every chronic disease, be it joint pain, just general stiffness and tiredness, to heart disease, to brain issues, all sorts, even cancer. So inflammatory responses are phenomenal, and we should be able to trigger inflammatory responses when we're fighting an infection or we have an injury. But constant or what we call chronic inflammation is a huge problem, and very commonly manifests as joints that just feel stiff and creaky and are less able to recover from exercise, and muscle stiffness, and all of these classic signs of when people feel they're getting older. So the gut microbes, I'll try and keep this simple, the gut microbes communicate very directly with our immune system. Over 70%, some people say 80% of our immune cells, so our immune system, the vast majority of our immune system lies alongside our digestive system. So if your digestive system and your microbiome within your digestive system is off, it's out of balance, it is full of nasty stuff instead of good stuff, that triggers an immune response that then triggers an inflammatory response. And that manifests in different ways with different people. And it very commonly manifests as an overreaction, an immune response within the muscles or within the joints, causing damage or causing excess inflammation. So your body's kind of on fire. Inflammation is kind of the body being on fire for too long, hence damage and not enough recovery. And so calming the inflammatory response by managing the gut microbiome and its communication with the immune system is fundamental to be having a nuanced and intelligent inflammatory response. So we get inflamed when we need it, but most of the time the immune system is just waiting in wait and not being overreactive. So inflammation management via the gut is hugely important and relatively easy to manage. And then it means your body heals so much better.
So what would you suggest people do if they want to manage these kinds of symptoms?
Well, first of all, get rid of the inflammatory foods. And they're inflammatory foods for a couple of reasons. It might be certain foods which upset blood sugar, which is hugely inflammatory throughout the whole body. And we can go into that in more detail if you want.
Yeah,
management of blood glucose is profoundly important for your mental health, your neurological health, your immune health, everything health. And too much blood sugar for too long is highly inflammatory. Plus too much sugar, so we're talking about sugary foods, and we're talking about refined starches as well. So lots of bread, pasta, rice, potatoes. But more than that, it's the ultra-processed foods, the packaged foods, which are going to be full of chemicals and full of sugars and processed starches. They not only have this disruptive effect on blood sugar, which is then inflammatory, they also have a very detrimental effect on our gut microbiome. They literally kill off our good gut microbes, and they facilitate the growth of what we call pathogens or nasty microbes that then changes the balance of the gut microbiome, that then changes the information that the gut microbiome is giving off. And so then that's having an effect around the body in many different ways. So cleaning up the diet, I mean, it's not news. It's not really anything very sexy or groundbreaking. It's about eating less rubbish, eating less packaged foods, looking at the ingredient list on the back, not just on the marketing on the front of a packet. And if there are words you can't pronounce because they're so chemicalized, you just haven't got a clue what they are. If the ingredients include things that you would never have in your cupboard at home because it's just so weird and wonderful. If there are more than 5 ingredients, I tend to say, on the back of a packet, just don't have it and try and opt, not exclusively. I do try and encourage people to have around 80% unpackaged foods in their diet, and then there's always a bit of room to indulge in things that you really fancy. But if you're going for fewer highly processed, highly refined foods, almost by definition, you will be better feeding your gut microbes and you will be calming inflammation in your body. So as a very basic starting point, just have less of the packaged stuff, more real food.
That's great advice. I was saying to you just before we hit record on the cameras that from a selfish point of view, if you looked at my diet, you might say, oh, it's a pretty good diet to sort of untrained eye, if you like.
Yeah, we would hope so, Will.
Yeah,
Yes.
but if you look at some of those foods, many of those came up in our training today as actually being hidden causes of these big spikes in blood sugar. So like your oats, your oat milk, white rice, all these things that aren't necessarily your bad foods.
Yeah, no,
but
they're
those
not
are
your
still
obvious.
having an effect.
Yes,
Can
they
you
are
just
still.
talk to that a little bit?
Yeah, and there is nuance. And this is what's really hard with human nutrition, because people like sort of black and white, they like absolutes, they like easy headers, and everybody is a bit different. So I just want to caveat that. And if one is having some potatoes or rice or pasta or bread, it's not disastrous until it is. So for someone like me with a history of type 2 diabetes, where I am very prone to poor blood sugar regulation, and I know that just through accident, through trying to eat those kinds of foods and really struggling, my tolerance is very low of carbohydrates, whether it's whole oats or rice or seemingly good wholesome foods. Whereas you might be different, younger, male, bigger muscle mass. So there is nuance here. However, my general recommendation, and especially as we get older because we get less tolerant of these foods that disrupt blood sugar, is that if one wants starchy foods like potatoes or rice or bread or pasta, to have less of it, to always have a protein present, because protein slows down the release of those starchy foods as sugar in your blood, to have some good fats present, because that again keeps a lid on the blood sugar, and to have lots of fiber-rich foods, so plant-based foods that haven't been highly processed, which again create a sort of softening effect of any foods that dysregulate blood sugar. So I class them as GPS foods to make it easy, the foods that I personally choose to have very few of, and I mentioned to you, and you're like, oh, it's soap milk, really? So GPS foods covers grains, wheat, rice, corn, oats, grains, potatoes, particularly large white potatoes, and particularly if they've been mashed or cooked for a long time, like a jacket potato, or made into crisps, lots of processing, more easily digested into sugar. So grains, potatoes, and sweet tasting foods. So sugary foods and artificially sweetened foods. So going back to grains, if, for example, you're eating big old whole porridge oats and you're adding lots of other ingredients into that bowl, probably fine. If you're having a packet of instant oats, highly processed, they're mushed up really soft so that they cook really quickly, and they've been pre-cooked, and then you're just sticking them in the microwave with a bit of water or skim milk, the bolus, most of that meal is just oats that is going to metabolize very quickly into sugar in your blood. Nothing to slow it down. So now your blood sugar is going to spike. That in itself is an inflammatory process. Then your body has to make lots of insulin to bring that blood sugar back down, because high blood sugar is so dangerous. So your body wants to get rid of it. So it sends in lots of insulin. Now your blood sugar crashes because of all the insulin. Insulin's moved the sugar out of your bloodstream into your fat cells. Now you're hungry, cranky, want more food. Now you're looking for a banana, sandwich, whatever. Now blood sugar shoots up again. Now insulin comes in. Now you crash again. That process, highly inflammatory, highly damaging to blood vessels, to brain health, to all sorts of things. So my general recommendations are to stick to foods or plates of food, combinations of food that have minimal impact. So you will almost always have some blood sugar increase when you're eating something. So minimize that by having protein present, by having fiber-rich foods present, by having some good fats, be it avocado, nuts, seeds, Greek yogurt, olive oil. And then that sort of balance of a meal means that if you're having potatoes or bread or pasta or rice or oats with berries and Greek yogurt and coconut flakes and nuts and seeds, the oats are just going to have a little blip and not this crazy up and down. That in itself changes everything about your physiology, and it changes everything about how you will get through the day, how hungry you will be through the day, how you will sleep that night. It changes so much. So blood glucose regulation is Massively important.
It's so fascinating. It's something I'm only just kind of starting to understand, is that it isn't just what you eat, it's how you pair it as well.
Yeah.
So you're saying that if I just ate that bowl of oats,
Yeah.
that would have a completely different effect on my blood sugar than if I combined it with other healthy things or protein.
Yeah, entirely. And this is very well documented. This is true for everybody. It's just a matter of degree. So it's more important to me because of my type of physiology, but it will still benefit you to not do that to yourself.
Sure.
It's really interesting with protein, and protein has become, excuse the pun, a bit of a hot potato at the moment, particularly for sort of perimenopausal and menopausal women. And this is true of aging people generally, that our capacity to digest protein. So I'm sure your audience are aware, but just to recap quickly. So protein, you have your animal protein, so your meat, your fish, your eggs, dairy foods. And then plant-based proteins, harder to digest in general, but a little bit of protein in nuts and seeds, beans and lentils, soy. So protein-based foods, all very important. The body uses protein in so many different ways. We often think about it for muscle and bone, and muscle in particular. Yet protein is used to make all of our brain chemicals, all of our enzymes. I mean, it does so many jobs, but we don't store protein. We don't hold on to it in the way we store fat in body fat, and we store quite a lot of glucose in our liver and in our muscles. We have no reserves of protein, and yet protein is required every single second of every single day, irrespective of exercise levels. So if we're not storing it, but we need it every day, what does that tell you? We have to eat it every day. And as we get older, we get less good at digesting it, so breaking it down and absorbing it. Then de facto, we have to eat more of it. And yet, what do people do as they get older? They eat smaller meals, and they certainly eat less red meat because, God forbid, you eat red meat and push your cholesterol up.
Yeah.
It's complicated.
Yeah.
But the answer is not to be eating less protein, it's to be eating more protein. Then that stabilizes blood sugar, and in particular, if you get some protein in the morning or for your first meal of the day, that changes the trajectory of your blood sugar, of your energy production, so your metabolism, your muscle response, everything about how you feel through the rest of the day can be dictated by what you're eating in that first meal. And if you're just having those fast-released carbs, your oats, your milk, that surge and then that crash changes then how you're going to manage food for the rest of the day. Protein has a very strong signaling response within the body. So we have all these sensors, not calorie sensors. We do not have a calorie sensor, but we have a nutrient sensor. And when we hit our protein requirement, then there are a whole ton of hormones that kick in to say, we're done, stop. And you really, if you have a great steak and a whole bunch of veggies, a lovely salad, at some point you just know you're done, however delicious. You just don't want to eat anymore. Yeah. It is so nutrient dense, a meal like that. Eggs are great as well. Eggs are very easily absorbed as well from a protein point of view. So a really nourishing meal, there gets a point where you're done. If you're eating a very nutrient poor meal, or where you're particularly lacking in protein, you have to eat a huge amount before you get the sense that you're done. And that's just because your physical stretch factor in your stomach is really pushed to the limits. Yeah. But you haven't satisfied your nutrient sensors, and you haven't satisfied your protein sensor. So then people tend to overeat, or they're all just a bit hungry, like just fancy, like I'm not really hungry, but I just fancy something. What do I fancy? And that's when people start grazing and nibbling and overeating, just this and this and this. Their bodies said, please give me some protein, just eat protein, and then I'll tell you to stop. But people don't get that because they're not meeting that adequate protein hit, particularly first thing in the morning.
So you're saying first meal of the day, high protein, really important. Yeah. And then let's stick on the topic of protein for a bit, because this is so important. So let's just start off with general recommendations. First of all, let's keep it really simple. How much protein should people actually be eating? There seems to be different figures quoted everywhere online. Yes. What do you think?
I'm always a little bit cautious to make general recommendations. And also, I don't think many people, if I say, which I'm going to say, let's aim for 90 grams a day, I'm not sure that means anything to a lot of people. Sure. So let's put that into context. So 90 grams is quite a useful measure because everybody is going to be different depending on their size, their muscle capacity, their exercise, lots of things. But 90 is a good goal. Few people hit that. Put that into context. A medium-sized egg is 6 grams of protein. That's a heck of a lot of eggs you're going to need to eat to hit your 90 grams. So, of course, you're going to spread it through your meals, 2 or 3 meals a day, probably. A decent size, sort of standard size steak, piece of fish, chicken breast, gives you somewhere between 20 and 25 grams of protein. So you can see that if you're eating 3 meals a day, you have to have a serious hit of protein at every meal to be getting even close to 90 grams. If you do that, you are going to feel very satisfied and not get slumps in between meals, not be looking for that sort of sugar hit at 3 or 4 in the afternoon. You're going to have a very nice stable blood sugar. So you'll eat and then keep going nice and steady energy-wise, eat and then keep going and not crash. So if we say roughly 90 grams as a sort of average for most people, probably over the age of 50 or 60, that's going to be a serious 3-egg omelette with a nice bit of cottage cheese in there, or a lovely bit of cheddar cheese and a nice salad with some avocado and some olive oil and some nuts and seeds on top, and Parmesan's great because it's very high in protein, and you just add in, you sort of layer up your protein rather than thinking you have to have a massive great big steak to hit your 30 or 40 grams per meal. You can just layer it up with different types of protein. Nice. But it does seem to be a huge game changer for people as they age who are just not getting pleasure out of food, and they're not really ever feeling like they're satisfied, and their bodies are getting weaker and they're getting more frail. We've got to be more conscientious about hitting those major food groups. Yeah,
so what you're saying really is that as we age, we don't actually need less protein, even though our appetite sometimes goes down.
Right.
We need more.
We do need more. We don't synthesize it. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And when you eat your protein as part of your diet, is it better to separate it into smaller hits, or is it equivalent if you just ate as much protein as you could in one meal?
Yeah, well, it is self-limiting because you can't, I mean, really, hitting 45, 50 grams in a meal is tough going. It's a really big meal. And there are tricks to help with the digestive system's capacity to make most use of that protein. So we can expedite that. We can make it work better. So because of sheer capacity and also enjoyment and realistically, spreading it out, the actual quantifiable evidence is in debate at the moment. So for a long time, and certainly when I first trained in nutritional medicine, it was considered that anything over 30 grams in a meal was wasted. You just couldn't synthesize it. You just couldn't absorb it. Now people are saying that's absolute rubbish. The more you eat, the more you absorb, end of. Which makes more sense. It's just that then you get so full up you don't continue eating it. Yeah. So I don't know the answer to that, but I would say to certainly be aiming for 30 grams in a meal is a good starting point. And if you can comfortably eat more, I just don't want people to gratuitously be sort of chewing down on a T-bone steak and then forcing more and more down. And that is where, and we talked about it earlier before we started filming, using protein powders. I feel slightly uncomfortable recommending them because in one breath I'm saying eat real food that looks like food, and then I'm saying eat a protein powder, which by definition is processed. However, for the convenience of people with busy lives who maybe don't comfortably eat a big steak, or in the morning they're rushed and they just want to get that protein in and don't know how, protein powders are great because they'll dissolve in a coffee or mix into yogurt or blend up in a smoothie effortlessly, and you can get 20, 30 grams without even trying. And because it has that long-lasting effect for the rest of the day, I think that's a very valuable tool. And there are great protein powders and there are rubbish protein powders. So if you make a better choice with that, a one-ingredient protein powder, then I think there's some real benefit. Yeah, so look for one ingredient. Anything else people should look for when they're trying to choose a protein powder? I generally recommend either an ideally organic, because of the way we produce dairy in this country, an organic whey isolate. And that word isolate is quite important because of the structure of the whey protein. So it's WHEY, the whey protein from dairy. And that is especially useful for people who are wanting to maintain muscle mass or build muscle mass, because we know it synthesizes into the muscles really well. So post-workout or during a workout, a whey-based protein smoothie is really, really good and generally very easy to digest. It's quite gentle on digestion, whereas other types of dairy, forms of dairy, can be quite difficult to digest. So a whey isolate is nice. If it's got a little vanilla flavoring, or sometimes they put some dark cacao, so chocolate powder in, fine. But it's all the sugars and all the added nutrients, and it tends to just detract from the quality of the protein. I'm a big fan of bone broth, and dehydrated bone broth being a bone broth powder. So it's a complete protein. It's very balanced protein. It's very easily metabolized. It has some unique qualities, as in its gut healing properties and really nice balance of amino acids. And yeah, you can get flavorless bone broth powder. So then that just goes in. You don't know it's there, dissolves easily, and it's really, really useful.
Yeah, that's great advice. And with the whey protein isolate as well, that was a game changer for me personally. I was having quite a lot of gut trouble with whey protein concentrate.
Yeah.
And obviously the cheapest stuff is always concentrate. And if you buy the bars, that's always concentrate.
Yep.
I just couldn't work out why I was getting all of these gut issues after going to the gym. Like after going to the gym, I'd have a protein shake. And I realised, it's just these powders, they don't suit me.
Yeah.
But someone just suggested switch to isolate and completely went away. It was totally fine.
Because it's quite an artificial thing to do. So the amount of whey protein one is consuming in a protein powder in a smoothie, compared to how much dairy you would be having if you had the equivalent whey in a whole dairy source. You're consuming vast amounts. It's kind of like a glass of orange juice. You've got 5 or 6 oranges. You wouldn't eat 5 or 6 oranges. So it's a very concentrated form of whey that you wouldn't normally ever have in real food. But the isolate, because it's gone through the mechanism of it being broken down, means your digestive system doesn't have to do the work. And that's why it makes such a difference.
Okay, brilliant. So while we're on the topic of protein and potentially going to the gym and building muscle, a lot of the people who watch my channel are concerned because as they get older, they've noticed this process of sarcopenia, their muscle mass is slipping away.
Yeah.
And now they're noticing they have to do more to maintain it, and it gets much harder to build it. Now, I tell people about how to train and do exercise to support muscle mass, but that's only half the battle. Like the other half has got to be down to your nutrition and what you do outside of your training.
Yeah.
Other than just making sure you're having adequate protein, can you just give some advice to anyone who is in this 50 plus category and really interested in building and maintaining muscle mass? What should they be thinking about?
Yeah, good question. And protein certainly is king. I mean, that's the starting point. And if you're not meeting those protein requirements, nothing else much changes. But simple things like vitamin D levels. So people are chronically low. With my patients, I blood test them because I can see symptom-wise that they're likely to be low, but there are so many genetic factors, gut microbiome factors that might determine whether someone's very, very low or just a little bit low. They might need a big supplement or just some extra vitamin D-rich foods. So I want to know that detail. When I optimize for vitamin D, it's actually a hormone and it's a signaling molecule. So it connects systems up in the body. So to optimize muscle response to exercise, recovery from exercise, protein synthesis, we need vitamin D. And it's really hard. It's not in many foods. We're not running around naked in the sunshine, or most people aren't. We don't get much sunshine. We're scared of the sunshine often. We're told it's bad for us. So to take a supplement is dead easy and sensible. It's about dose, and we can't, as I say, no dose unless we see where your levels are. But get that up to like 120 nmols, which is the British scale, or around 50 with the American scale. If you are around those levels, immune, inflammatory, brain health, muscle health, bone health, massively, all starts to work better. So your effort you get much better response from the effort. And I find that people can push themselves harder. So I'm all about, particularly for women in their 50s and 60s, doing less cardio, very inflammatory, very hard on joints, not very effective at anything very much other than, can be very good psychologically. I think it can help people feel sort of better mood-wise. But to be doing short, hard weights and resistance work, big fan of that. And I will do that with optimizing their vitamin D, and they find that they get stronger quickly. So it's not just that they're maintaining, they can actually see benefit. They can do more press-ups, they can do more pull-ups, or do a pull-up, which they can never do before. And And that's so motivating that then they're inspired to keep exercising, keep pushing themselves. Because if you're just doing all this hard work but nothing much is changing, it makes people really despondent. So people have to see results, otherwise they're just going to give up. So optimizing vitamin D is really key. And omega-3 fatty acids are often lacking. And again, another anti-inflammatory and a connector upper, and helps quite significantly with lipolysis, so fat burning. And if we're going to have a healthy, lean body, which most people are aspiring to, whether or not it's about aesthetics, from a health point of view, if we have excess body fat, and particularly visceral fat, so the fat underneath the muscle wall, in and around our organs, so we see it infiltrating in the liver, in the heart vessels, in the pancreas, this visceral fat in and of itself is inflammatory. Visceral fat produces inflammatory cytokines, which mess with your immune system and make you inflamed, which by definition means your muscles will not be able to do the job they want to do so well. So in optimizing your vitamin D, and especially your omega-3, oily fish, most people don't eat enough, 4 to 5 portions a week of mackerel, sardines, herring, anchovies or wild salmon. Very hard to meet that on a regular basis. Most people don't like the oily, fishy fish. So a good quality fish oil supplement, 1,000 to 2,000 milligrams a day with food. Very anti-inflammatory. Again, a connector upper, and helps turn body fat via the liver into energy. So now we get leaner, less inflamed, less visceral body fat. Body's in a better balanced state. Muscle can build. I do not see any reason why, and I work predominantly with women, not exclusively, women in their late 50s and 60s, I'm in that category, you can build muscle, you can get lean and strong. And I think we're just led to believe we're just going to become weak and frail. It's terrifying.
No, I totally agree.
It takes a bit of effort, but it can be done. And once you're there, then keeping it there, maintaining it, it does not mean hours in the gym. Not at all.
The message is all wrong, isn't it?
It's really wrong.
And we see it from time and time again in the data. There are tons of studies to show that you can build muscle literally at any age. Yes, it gets harder. There's no denying it gets tougher.
I agree.
And you do run into anabolic resistance. However, it's not impossible. And like you said, I think people do often overestimate what they need to be doing
hugely
to make progress.
Yes, because we live in a world where more, better, harder, longer gets results. And we've got to change that, and we've got to understand, and people find this so hard to trust in being true, that muscle builds, and you know this obviously, but muscle builds after, not during. So we're damaging and then we're recovering, and it's in that recovery process that the body is creating new muscle tissue, burning fat, doing all the magic that we want the body to do. And the fear of getting older and getting weaker and not getting results, and that over pushing, over stressing, over exercise and not recovering enough, then leads to muscle loss. And it's kind of ironic, but yes, you can undo that. And I was guilty of it, absolutely. I was a runner and over-exerciser and under-eater and a calorie counter and a low-fat eater and all of that, to the point where I was sarcopenic and osteopenic at 28 years old. That shouldn't be possible, but I pushed my body so hard, I didn't give it the right nutrients, and I didn't give it a chance to heal and get stronger. So I think we have to be gentler with ourselves and understand the power of recovery. That's where the magic happens, and that's why sleep is so important.
So that's a lovely story, actually. Obviously, how you went from where you were at 28 to where you are now. I'm sure the people watching would love to hear a little bit more about the steps you took to go from osteopenic and sarcopenic to quite clearly much healthier now.
Much healthier now. Yes, so thankfully not diabetic anymore, not osteopenic or sarcopenic, and quite the opposite. It was, so we're talking about the 80s, very little knowledge of all of this. I chose to be vegan. I'm an animal lover. I felt like it was the right thing to do. What I've come to understand is that with my genetics, I don't do good conversions. So a quick example. Carrots are known for their vitamin A content. Actually, they don't contain any vitamin A. They contain something called beta-carotene, which the body can convert into vitamin A. Vitamin A is an incredibly important vitamin, fat-soluble vitamin. There is no vitamin A in plant foods, only in animal foods. But we can hopefully make it through plant foods. I can't. If you've got certain genetic types, you can't make that conversion. Certain types of iron, so heme iron, non-heme iron. So plant foods have iron that's very inactive and the body has to activate it. If you have iron in animal foods, it's heme, it's ready to go. Hemoglobin makes iron, ready to go. If you don't convert non-heme to heme, you're bad. I didn't make that conversion well. I am a really bad vegan. I was trying really hard. I was already in the nutrition field. I was already in the health field. I was running every day. I was eating a very, very clean diet. Lots of whole grains, lots of fruit, lots of vegetables, lots of dried fruit, sugar bomb, lots of bread, just living on beans, lentils, pasta, bread, all healthy seemingly stuff, which somebody might be able to thrive on. I couldn't. I just didn't know it at the time. So I became hugely nutrient deficient, but kept on pushing because I'm a pusher. So I was doing my runs every single day, running my own business, doing all of this stuff, massively malnourished, not being able to absorb these very, very essential nutrients on a vegan diet, which by definition is high carbohydrate, low protein, and I was also choosing to be low fat because I was told by the people back then that low fat spread, soy spread was good for you. All wrong. So my body crashed basically, and I was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, sarcopenia, and osteopenia. And I was in America training and smelt garlic chicken. Literally walking past a restaurant in San Francisco, and every cell of my body said, "Feed me." This is so true. And I just knew, like on the deepest, most profound level, I had to eat that garlic chicken, which I did, and have never looked back. I have only in the fairly recent years come to understand why I was unable to thrive as a vegan. Yeah. Some people can, some people can't. I can't. I'm very much a caveman. I'm interested. There's very little science behind this, but I like the idea of blood types. So if you're O blood type, as I am, pre-agriculture, which is about 10,000 years ago, when we were still hunter-gatherers. 10,000 years ago is a blip in our evolution. So only 10,000 years ago did we start to settle, farm, have dairy in our diet, grow crops, so grains were coming in. Prior to that, we were hunter-gatherers. We were eating meat, we were eating roots, we were eating berries, and apparently all hunter-gatherers are O-type. It is the oldest blood type, it's the most common blood type, and the A's and the B's only came about once we settled and we started to eat domestic grains that we started to grow.
That's so interesting.
It is so interesting, and when you look at what a paleo diet, which is what kind of came about, that's where, when I was in America, that was the sort of lingo that was being talked about, being paleo, eating like a caveman, and that's what I switched to, and my health transformed. I was in my early 30s by then, so easy for the body to recover back then. It just made sense that I ate, in theory, like a caveman, and my body, my energy, my brain, my everything changed. So we have to find what suits us. Yeah. And that can be hard because people get frustrated. There's so much information out there, and every expert has their opinion, and often they're completely opposed, and yet everyone can be very convincing. And so I think the message is to try and intuit. Most people know, this isn't great for me, but I love it, so I'll eat it anyway. Yeah. And it's usually the foods we love and the foods we crave and the foods we feel that we can't bear to give up. Mine was bread, definitely a bread junkie. That was my drug of choice. It's those very foods that are usually the foods that have to go. Yeah. It doesn't mean never. There's quite a lot of healing that has to go on, and then someone like me, I can do some bread some of the time or some higher glycemic foods some of the time, but I can't do them all of the time. Otherwise, I'll just go straight back into being a diabetic.
Yeah, well, I love that approach. It's so personal to the individual. Yeah. And you're right, we do see these messages shouted across social media and on the internet all the time, like, this is the diet that everyone should be on. This is going to heal your life, kind of thing. Yeah, it's terrible because it's very seductive, and people want that. They want that quick fix. Yeah. And they want those little nuggets, and it may well have worked for that particular person. Sure.
it's very dangerous to assume it's going to work for you. Yeah.
Okay, I'm really glad you said that. Let's talk a little bit about something else that people are really interested in my audience, and that is fat loss. Okay, so many of my audience are looking to reduce their body fat, partly for health reasons, partly for aesthetic reasons.
Sure.
What kind of advice have you got for people over 50 who have that as a goal, and maybe they've noticed that their metabolism's not what it once was, and it's getting harder?
Insulin. Insulin's the big one. So insulin is an incredibly powerful hormone, and people do not get this message, and it's important, and it is just biological fact that insulin is our main fat storage hormone. We produce insulin when we have high blood sugar. We do not produce insulin when we don't have high blood sugar. So as I mentioned earlier, having lots of sugar in your blood, because it's so damaging, your body will do whatever it can to get rid of that high blood sugar. It does it through this hormone called insulin. So as blood sugar goes up, you make appropriate levels of insulin. Insulin moves that sugar out of the bloodstream. The insulin will try and store it. There's a bit of storage room in the liver, a bit of storage room in your muscles, particularly if you've just emptied them by exercising. But for most people, most of the time, all the sugar in their blood, insulin's coming in trying to move it, got nowhere to go other than fat cells. So we start to put on weight because we are storing our sugar from the blood, which is converted by insulin into body fat very readily, and it happens more readily as we age. And it happens more readily as we age, often because we're more sedentary. And if we move more, we manage our blood sugar better, so we make less insulin, so we store less fat. But also there is this condition, which is the precursor to diabetes, called insulin resistance. This is true of all hormones. We can become resistant to our own hormones, which means then our body just has to make more and more and more to do the same job. So if one, like you, eats some porridge in the morning and you get X amount of blood sugar, you make X amount of insulin, sorts out your blood sugar, job done. But over decades, that process becomes more clunky and a bit stuck. You eat the same amount of porridge, your blood sugar goes up the same amount, but now you're making this much insulin to deal with the problem of blood sugar. All this insulin means that you're better at storing fat, and when you are storing fat under the influence of insulin, you cannot burn fat. So put simply, if one wants to be able to turn on one's fat burning processes more often, more efficiently, you need to be reducing your amount of insulin. And you do that by doing what I mentioned earlier, which is reducing or avoiding, because we don't need them, they're not necessary, reducing or avoiding the GPS foods, grains, potatoes, and sweet tasting foods. You get less of a blood sugar response, you get less insulin. Over time, you get resensitized to your insulin. So now you're making the right amounts, not the wrong amounts. And that creates more windows of time in between meals, and especially at night when we burn most of our body fat, for that lipolysis to happen. And then we lean out. And the body's so intelligent that it will almost always reduce the visceral fat first. So people often aren't getting the results that they think they want because they want to see it. They want the stuff that they can pinch to go away. Actually, the really dangerous stuff that you need to get rid of first is what the body is getting rid of. So it is metabolizing the fat that is inter-organ and interstitial. And even if people want a sort of lean look muscle-wise, we can build up fat on top of the muscle, but also intramuscularly within the muscle. And so as we get better at fat burning and we manage our blood sugar better through less insulin, we just have these longer windows of time. We are stripping the fat out of our tissues wherever they are. So then you may not build more muscle, but you will look more muscular because you are leaner. You've got less softness because your muscles are being more exposed. So many people have a six-pack, just can't see it because of all the blubber on top of it. Start to rid yourself of the fat. Done through a sensible, nothing extreme. We're not talking keto, as in virtually no carbs and tons of fat. Just reducing those aggressive carbohydrates more often. More fats, more fiber, more good protein. Almost by definition, very few exceptions, people will start to get leaner.
Yeah. So you're not saying cut carbs entirely. That's
I'm not
what you're saying.
No, and
It's
a good point.
The grains, the potatoes
And the sweet tasting foods.
things.
Because all fruit and all vegetables is carbohydrates.
Yeah.
So people talk about this low carb or this keto diet or no carbs, and it's not. I am saying eat loads of veg, eat loads of salad stuff, eat some sensible fruits. Absolutely, they are fundamental to the health of your gut microbiome. Fiber feeds our gut microbes. We have to have fiber-rich foods. Nuts and seeds, beans and lentils, fruits and vegetables are all carbohydrates. Lentils are carbohydrates. I'm not saying don't eat lentils. I'm saying don't eat those foods that have that aggressive impact, that overproduce insulin, that keep you in that fat storing state, and by definition means you can't burn fat. Which then leads to more sugar cravings because your body can't make energy from burning fat. It wants energy, so it's going to make you eat carbs. Yeah.
What about hunger? So this is something people struggle with whenever they think, oh, I'm on a diet. The first thing that springs to mind is I'm going to be hungry all the time. How am I going to cope? Have you got any advice for people?
Yeah, well, going back to protein really, because protein will satisfy more quickly, most fully, for longest. And I also think we need to move on from this idea of counting calories. The energy in, energy out paradigm is so clumsy and simplistic. And yes, calories sort of matter a bit, but if you eat really well, your body will tell you what to eat when, and some days you might eat a lot and some days you might eat a little. And you have to trust that your body knows what to do, and you have to honor those signals. Hunger is often triggered by either lack of nourishment, like I said. So if you are lacking in vitamins or minerals or protein, your brain will tell you to keep eating. Too few calories, your body will say, feed me. And this is the irony of a low-calorie diet. Your body actually reduces metabolic function to meet your calorie intake. People think by eating fewer calories that you're just going to automatically burn more fat. No. For most people, when they eat fewer calories, their body, their metabolic revving just slows down to meet that calorie intake. And so then they stop losing weight, they plateau, and then they, if they're really determined, they eat even fewer calories. And so the body goes, oh, less fuel coming in, let's match that energy intake. So you are turning down your metabolic fire. That's the last thing you want to do. You want to upregulate your metabolic fire, eat more, but burn more, not burn less. And that's about the composition of your meals, not the amount of calories. And that's where protein, fats, and fiber change everything about your metabolism, keeping you feeling full and allowing your body to burn your body fat as energy so you're not constantly hungry. It's miserable. Nobody's going to stick to anything if they're hungry all the time. It's distracting. It's miserable,
So you're saying we should stop with the calorie tracking and instead track
macros.
Protein, carbohydrates, fat, fiber. Anything else people should sort of substitute that calorie counting for?
No, those are the main ones. And I would encourage people, if they can, and there's practicalities and there's finances sometimes, although the GP might do that, to get a basic blood test, looking particularly at vitamin D levels, looking at your iron levels, because those things would change. Like I say, if your body is desperate for key nutrients, your body's going to keep asking for food.
And energy levels as well, especially vitamin D. We've had so many patients come in and just say, oh, I just can't do anything, I've got no energy.
Everything's
broken.
Vitamin D low, everything low. Your body will struggle. Your body will put the brakes on.
It makes perfect sense. I could talk to you all day about this stuff, Stephanie, and we are going to continue this conversation on the Lifelong Mobility platform. But before I leave the guys on YouTube, if you could only give 3 pieces of advice, what would they be?
Okay. Feed your gut microbes. Crucial, because they're doing so much programming. Microbes feed on fiber. Fruit and veg, beans and lentils, nuts and seeds. In their most whole form and in their least starchy form. So potatoes don't count. So feed your microbes fiber. Then they'll be very grateful for that. And some fermented foods. We didn't really go there with gut health, but fermented foods and fiber keep your gut microbes happy. So that's really, really critical. Second, we've covered it, but protein. Getting protein at every meal. I can't emphasize enough. It's not a fad thing. It's just we've forgotten about it, and we're coming back to the idea of how important protein is, particularly for this demographic of plus 50s. It is really, really important, and changes everything about how you feel and how your metabolic fire works. And the third thing would be sleep. because we repair so much, we burn fat at night, our inflammation goes down, people compromise their sleep. 8 hours average, but some people can do fine on 6 and some people need 9, and it's about the quality of sleep. And I think it gets harder to sleep well as we age, and so we have to work harder at it. So cool room, dark room, ideally no screens, no phones in the bedroom, all of that, you know. But sleep is super, super important, and we definitely have to work harder at it as we get older.
I love it. It's such a good message. And I can't thank you enough for coming on
Pleasure.
today. I'm sure so many of the viewers are going to want to know a bit more about you and learn about what you do for your clients. And I know you've got a wonderful book out. Can you tell people a little bit about that?
Sure,
too?
thanks, Will. Yeah, my latest book is called Eat Your Brain Happy, and it is about this incredible relationship the gut microbes and the brain have. It's focusing on anxiety, depression, and general mental resilience, and how what we eat and how our microbes work can change how our brain works. So it explains all of that. It sort of explains the science of it, and then lots of practical stuff in the second half. I did write a book 9 years ago called, clumsy title, Why Eating Less and Exercising More Makes You Fat, which actually covers a lot of this blood sugar, metabolism, fat burning stuff. It talks about the 4 fundamentals to good metabolic health on the back of me overcoming my diabetes. I'm rewriting that now, and it would be called Eat Your Body Lean, and looks at that whole blood sugar, metabolism, energy production, gut health thing. So that's going to be coming out next year. And you can find me and all the work I do and my gut health retreats on Instagram, which is Health in Hand UK.
Brilliant. Well, we will leave a link to that in the show notes below, and to your book as well.
Thank you, Will.
Thank you so much for coming on. We're going to continue our conversation now for another half an hour or so on the Lifelong Mobility platform. There'll be a link below if you want to come and join us there. But thank you very much for watching, and thank you for being such a wonderful guest.
Pleasure.